Cool. I'm in conversation with Nombulelo Fox. So I'm glad that we actually share the same surname, even though we don't share the same surname. But Phukuje means literally a fox. I think the first point that I want to speak about is, what do you want to be remembered for in the industry? And by that, I mean like literally right now. I know 10 years down the line will be different where you are, but right now, today.
To be honest, it's tricky, but at the same time, I think the first thing that comes to mind about, what I want people to remember about me is the fact that I am a very accessible person. So not just accessible in terms of, I'm always readily available for whatever it is that people need me for, but for the main fact that the information that I put out is out there to teach people to, help empower them, whether it's people within my space of PR, so people coming into, public relations and comms, but even, people like influencers, because since I work with them, from time to time, there's so many things that a lot of people still don't know that they're learning. And I feel like being accessible is probably the strongest thing I have to my name, I suppose, because if you could check my Instagram DMs, you'll see a lot of influencers asking questions about certain things, and having that open conversation, because I think we've generally just moved away from being in a space of people having to struggle to look for information. And so the reason why I'm here is because you can basically access it, whether you are a fellow PR practitioner or you're a content creator. I think that's definitely one of the most important things that I think I want to be remembered by. So I think looking at accessibility, but more so just, I, as a person who pushes the idea of education within the space, I think that also is something else that I also hold close to my heart. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I want to take it back to let me be honest with you. I've only known you via your social media as an influencer, right? So when I knew Nombulelo, I was not knowing Nombulelo in the PR industry. I just knew Nombulelo in the influencer space. And I mean, I'm a guy, I don't have anything to do with your natural hair, with weave, and all of those other things to do with hair, But I was very much intrigued about the content that you put out there. And my first thing when the Clicks thing happened, I said, what is Nombulelo going to say? Do you feel, Uguti, you have the responsibility to comment or to do something when such things happen? That was a crisis. And it also, I think, from a PR point of view, if you comment in a wrong way, so they say, it could also put your brand in jeopardy.
True. So I think my opinions just around the whole thing, I was also obviously torn because, look, it's not to say brands don't make mistakes. That would honestly just, be shooting ourselves in the foot, because the reality is that mistakes happen in every single workforce. The only difference is that it depends on how big your brand is and how visible it is for your audience, right? And so if you associate yourself with a very big community like the natural hair community, and you know very well that this is a very active community that takes their opinions very seriously, you need to always tread carefully. And I say this with the most sincere feeling towards the brand, because they've done a very good job from a perspective of trying to teach a lot of children and women of color about their own hair, because if we're being real, they are the biggest brand that hosts the biggest event for natural hair care. And that's also how I got to know the knowledge that I have about natural hair, was actually through them. So For me, it was a shocker because it was like, okay, you guys have been in the game for, X number of years. And the last thing you want to find yourself in is, in such a mess where we can't be correcting you on the jargon that you're using or the jargon that your client is using. Because also bear in mind, this is not just clicks. This is also Tresemme. Yeah. So having to look at it at that point of view, it just was it was a lot for me, because I was just like, I obviously can't really necessarily boycott clicks as much as that's how I felt in the beginning, but I was just like, it doesn't make any sense, because what are the options available, right?
So you didn't go to any of the strikes and all of those things?
No. I'm not that person. My tool of protest is always going to be social media and writing about it. But also when I think about the repercussions as well, I'm just like, you look at the people that are actually working on the ground. Yeah. If we're protesting against clicks, it needs to be very strategic. It needs to be against Tresemme, because now you have other brands that are owned by Black women or, Black owned in general that, operate in clicks. Now suddenly they get overshadowed because of that one mistake that one particular brand had made. And I also just feel like the crisis comes around that particular, crisis didn't have to just be with clicks, but it also had to be a joint effort with Tresemme. But the way that it was just executed just wasn't done in a very smart way. It was left to last minute. They literally waited for the entire crisis to build up. And I think that's the reason why so many people were just like, okay, cool. Well, Clicks doesn't care about us. Clicks doesn't care about our money. So why should we also care? But then you look at it now today, people are actually still supporting. So yeah.
I'm telling you right now, like there were a couple of colleagues that were cutting their Clicks cards saying, no, I'm not gonna go in there. And this morning, they actually went to Clicks. And
exactly.
Yeah, and there was a saying that if you wanna make a woman happy, take her on a discount or Clicks date or whatever. I don't know what it's called. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. But if you find yourself, just out of topic though, this will keep it brief. Do you find yourself very conflicted in terms of like the argument that in terms of what society has, in terms of like those speak about men commenting about women with weaves, their slavery, women with natural hairs, blah, 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 all of those things?
Pardon, what was the question?
Oh, I'm saying in terms of the conversation or the idea that society like a relaxed hair and all that. But let's move on from that.
That's gone.
Take me through your PR journey, then. Let's speak about your PR journey, where you started. Why did you decide to do PR or comms? The industry as a whole. Yeah.
So I basically started in high school, but in high school, obviously, when you're still kind of deciding what it is that you want to do. So the one thing I knew very well was that I'm a person who, based on the subjects that I used to take, even though they're not really, related to what I do now, but I remember when we used to do drama and we used to do a lot of just activities when it came to speaking, when it came to writing. There was a very strong, kind of vibration towards those activities. So when I got to matric and I was obviously just choosing which courses I needed to do, at the time I figured to myself, I was like, okay, I need to obviously choose a course that I know I'm gonna, make money out of, because money matters, especially when you come from a background where you weren't really privileged to, get everything that you'd ever want as a kid. So, and then I went to, I think it was go varsity college. So the other universities, I actually applied for law. I don't know why I did that, because I don't like reading a lot. So I applied and I was just like, okay, maybe, it might happen. And then I stumbled across a student advisor, go varsity college. So varsity college also had a very good relationship with my high school. So I sat down with the student advisor and he took me through just some of the courses and what basically it entailed. and he did this whole like activity where it was almost like an aptitude test to kind of determine where your strengths basically lie. And a lot of the strengths that came out of that were a lot of like your more verbal type of activities, so speaking, presenting, and kind of enjoying being the center of attention as well. That's also another thing. So when I looked at the options that were available just from a course, perspective, the one thing that also just stuck out was they had a degree, I think it was the second year of having that program. It was corporate communications. Yeah. So at the time, I wasn't really familiar with it. So they kind of unpacked it for me. And for me, I was just like, hey, that's actually, something I'd really be interested in compared to law, because, I just didn't see any fun in that. But I figured, I was like, hey, I could, actually have some fun with this degree compared to, a more traditional career path, basically. So from that point on, I basically enrolled. I got a bursary, actually, it was through them, and to basically just study for that 3 years. So cool. I mean, what do I have to lose, So I set up my stuff, sent it through, and then I got a call back, and they were like, hey, we're actually interested in seeing you. So I went for the interview, they loved me. And then the problem now was that I'd never been to an interview where, you know how with a lot of graduate programs now, it includes a number of other applicants, right? Mm-hmm. So initially I was like, okay, now I have to compete with all these people, and it's a lot. And it kind of just like pushes you back, because it's like, will you even get this job? So I had that. So we basically had that session. So I got to meet the other candidates as well. We basically did like a number of activities, obviously, for them to see who's good at this and whatever. And then from that point on, we have a last interview. So the previous, it's so scary, but like the day before that, kind of day happened, I actually had a car accident. So my mom was just like, you can't go, like you really can't go. And I was like, why not? Because this could be actually an opportunity that, kind of lets me in through that door within this particular industry. And she was just like, okay. And I literally I went to this internship day, and I was a mess, but I literally pushed through. And funny enough, I ended up actually getting the job in the end. And so I was very excited, because I was like, for me, it was a big achievement, not in that because it was my first kind of corporate job, but because the people in my family, when you look at the history in terms of how everyone has kind of stretched themselves in terms of education, no one has ever gotten to that point where they've gotten their formal education, and then now they've actually jumped, into corporate and so on. So it was pretty exciting. And I think I didn't realize how great the environment I was in was actually like, in my opinion at the time, because bear in mind, I still don't know this industry. Well, at the time, I didn't know this industry very well. So I was like, okay, cool. This is, a great opportunity to start. And only to find, I think I'm very, very lucky, because I got to work with an amazing agency that wins awards, and I still brag about it to this day. And from that point on, that literally just started my journey. So I started off Atmosphere. So Atmosphere, I'd been there from 2016 until 2018. And then from 2018, I was just like, I think now it's just time to spread my wings, because, in PR, guys, 2 years feels like 20 years, if we're being honest, because you just work on so many accounts. So at some point, you also just want to change environments. So I left, I went to another agency called Helen Alton Strategies.
Like this campaign or this project or this thing, that was my best, I'm happy about what I've done there.
Yeah. I think, there's so many campaigns. If I know.
Just
I can't even
the best.
I'll just think of one.
The best.
But I think the best one for me that kind of it got to unleash my capabilities as an individual, but also just, you know, a member of the team, had to be in 2017. So I was still at Atmosphere, and we had just gotten Red Bull as a client, but as a project client. So it was amazing for me because I was actually involved from the process of actually bagging the account, so part of the actual pitch. And soon after we won that project, I got to actually do almost pretty much everything. So from being involved in strat to executing everything. So for me, it was really, really a full 360 experience for me. But I think, so basically the campaign was all about, you know, the Red Bull culture clash, which was a first for South Africa. So, you know, it was quite, it was nerve-wracking because it was the first of its kind in the country, because they've done it, you know, in the UK and other countries as well. So there was that expectation that, you know, you needed to almost amount to, but also I was just like, I needed to start believing in myself, because if I didn't, then this client wasn't going to think so as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that even in the results that we got, they were amazing. The people that we were working with, because it was a music experience. So there's people that I also had looked up to, you know, growing up, people that I was listening to as, you know, South African girl, and to actually just be involved and with all of these, you know, amazing people. I think that for me was just, it was super, super amazing. So, that particular campaign, I can tell you now, is the reason why I'm still so connected to a lot of media and influencers today, because it got to, it linked, I don't know, I can't really explain it, but it almost kind of brought so many people in without realizing. And it was in that moment where, you know, my network just also started growing, not just within that space, but even when, you know, I mentioned that, hey, I've worked on Red Bull, and people are like, oh, so, you know, who's Banban? And those are the people that I actually worked with on the team. Yeah. And you realize, Uguti, because these conversations are being had in people's mouths, people remember your name and people have these associations. It's great because you know that you've done an amazing job. And so, you know, what people have to say about the event actually is just a reflection of you as well. So I think that's, that was definitely one of my most greatest campaigns that I had worked on. And in terms of, I know you're asking just about Chappies.
And now we are calling a bubble gum a Chappies. You know what I mean?
Yes.
A bubble gum.
No, Chappies. You must turn your brands into verbs. That's how it should be, you know? So I think working on Chappies was definitely an amazing experience. Again, it's like working on any sort of nostalgic brand, basically, that you know have consumed all these years. But obviously, it's very different because I guess you don't really. I'm trying to literally put this into words. But I think. Working on these amazing brands has definitely given me just an amazing insight into, you know, how people actually operate, because as you're saying now, you don't really see Chappies on ads and so on, but it is a brand that lives on the ground. But it's like that because of the amount of work that's been put in over the years. So it actually made it easier for some of us to work on the account, because it was like, okay, cool, everyone knows Chappies, so there's not really much of a, you know, kind of heavy or aggressive PR strat that you have to go for, because it's a brand that anyone knows, you know, except maybe the so it was cool.
So when are you giving me that t-shirt thing? Let's talk about that.
Listen, I can't. That is like my souvenir. I'll always content creation space. I wasn't necessarily new to it. So when I was in varsity, I actually started a blog called Born Free Conversations. And it was just me just telling my story. And because obviously, you know, over the years, blogs have kind of fluctuated. People weren't reading them as much. I figured I was like, okay, cool. Let's actually just regroup and see what are the subjects or interests that I'm actually, keen on speaking about. And one of those had always been hair. But I wasn't really informed in terms of, okay, cool, what is it about hair that I want to talk about? Do I want to educate? Do I just want to, just show people pictures of what my hair looks like? But also I coupled that with the fact that, in my day-to-day capacity, at home, people would always ask me about my hair and how I grow my hair and how I do certain things to it. And so because of all of this, information around me, I was just like, okay, cool. What makes more sense to actually just put all of this content on social media? And literally, I just started opening an account, and I was just like, okay, let's go. Let's just see what happens. And from that point on, it's just been an amazing journey, because it hasn't necessarily been a move from PR to, content creation or, playing the role of an influencer. For me, it was just an extension of who I am as a PR person. Because bear in mind, even some of the content that I share is still very much linked to the work that I do from a day-to-day. Like if you see with some of my posts, I normally mention just some, quick tips for some people who, are not really clued up in terms of how to get campaigns and so on. So it helps to have someone who is within the content creation space to also educate you about some of the fundamentals that you would require as a fellow content creator yourself. So it's been quite great. I've always taken, tips and some of the, insights that I have or that I've learned to know as a PR specialist, and basically include them in my content creation work. And look, I'm not the most consistent person, but I try to at least, kind of have that consistency throughout. So it's been quite cool.
Okay. Last question. We know COVID-19 hit us very hard. Some lost their jobs, some were retrenched, some graduated and they're still trying to break through into the industry. For someone that has been in the industry for such a long time, what words of encouragement or advice would you give a graduate that's trying to break through into the PR comms space? From your side.
To be honest, the one thing that I've noted about this particular period is that people needed to also think on their feet. So it's given us time to actually think about what it is that we want, and to always go for what it is that we want. So for a student or for someone who's just sitting there and just wondering how they can also just break the doors of trying to be in the space, I definitely feel like I could say people need to also start being very proactive. I think gone are the days where, we always share, this particular place is looking for a person, this, they're looking for these candidates. Now it needs to be it needs to be an experience where the person needs to kind of show off their skills. They need to show off their expertise so that they get noticed. Very much like how content creators or influencers basically operate. Because when you think about Instagrammers try to be the most visually appealing, individuals out there, because that's what people buy into. So for you as someone who's looking for a job, you need to show off what you're good at and make sure that, it's very different from the rest of the crowd. And it doesn't mean that now you have to go all out, you have to, use money to do this just so you can get noticed. It's not even that. It's about, honestly, networking with the people that you follow on social media, having those conversations. Don't be scared to do it, because a lot of the time people get the opportunities get blocked because they don't have the confidence to even speak up and say, hey, this is what I do. I think I'm really great at this. Do you perhaps know of a person, or do you guys maybe have that opportunity that may fit for me? Or hey, if there's a learning opportunity, I can put my hand up and I'll be part of it. So it's I think it's really about being very, very proactive, and also being certain that this is what you really want, because we see it all the time where people get given opportunities and then they're actually not really passionate about them. So you need to really dig deep, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people have during this time while at home, and actually know what it is that you want, because at the end of the day, you're also a brand yourself as an individual. These companies that are hiring need to also believe in you. Other individuals need to believe in you in order for them to actually sell you, to all these great opportunities. So I think, that's pretty much what I would say. Yeah, what I would say to them.
Okay, great. Finally, we get to do this interview. Cool. I'm in conversation with Nombulelo Fox. So I'm glad that we actually share the same surname, even though we don't share the same surname. But Phukuje means literally a fox.